Good day, everyone, and welcome to another Live with Kevin, this time on a Tuesday. Glad that you're here. Some of you, that won't matter because you'll be watching this later. But for those of you that are live, I'm so glad that you're here with us live. If you are live, if you would please go into the chat function, comment function of whatever social media platform you're on and say hello. Tell us where you're located. That will be wonderful. Would love to know that. There's another reason, though, I'm asking you to do that because I want you to engage with me, with us for the next few minutes. Because if you will engage, this will be a better podcast. If you will engage, you'll get more out of this. And if I just think about it this way, if you were joining me for a cup of coffee with my guest and the three of us were sitting around the table, if you had a question, you would ask it. So ask it. If you had a comment, you'd share it. So share it. And if you had an idea, you would offer it. So why not offer it? Like, just think of this as if we were around a table. We're around a virtual table. So if you've got an idea, if you got a question, you got a comment, share them. I hope you'll do that. And that will make for a better conversation and eventually a better podcast. If you missed that already, up there, you'll see that this will eventually be an episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. And so now that I've introduced this live, let's come back and do a countdown, which will be the podcast itself. Marissa, this is for you in 3, 2, 1. Habits can both hinder us and help us on life's journey. And habits can make or break us as a leader too. That's why we're talking about habits today, specifically those that can make us mentally stronger and better able to lead with remarkable results. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders grow personally and professionally to lead more effectively and make a bigger positive difference for their teams, organizations, and the world. If you are listening to this podcast in the future, you could join us live because all of them start out as live streams on a variety of social media platforms. You can learn more about when they're happening and how to get connected for them by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by my upcoming book, Flexible Leadership, Navigating Uncertainty and Leading with Confidence. This book will give you a new perspective and a skill set to lead in the challenging times in a more effective and flexible and confident way. Pre-ordering your copy now guarantees you the best possible price and to be an early adopter of the groundbreaking ideas I will share. Learn more and pre-order your copy now at remarkablepodcast.com/flexible. I hope you'll do that as I bring in my guest, Scott Mautz. And I lost what I was going to do. Let me get it back up here. There's Scott. Let me introduce him for you, and then we'll get started. Scott is the CEO and founder of Profound Performance, a keynote, workshop, and training organization empowering business leaders to become better or inspired versions of themselves. Scott is an award-winning best-selling author, a popular LinkedIn learning course instructor, and a faculty member at Indiana University's School of Business for Executive Education. As a Purdue grad, I will not hold that against him. His most recent book is The Mentally Strong Leader: Build the Habits to productively regulate your emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. His unique combination of corporate experience, research, storytelling techniques, comedy, and delivery engages us all. Today, he's our guest. Scott, we haven't had the chance to chat in quite a long time. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a minute. I'm glad to be alive on Live with Kevin, the live wire that he is and that you are, Kevin. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the new book on flexibility too. You want to talk about something important for leadership. Fantastic. So
there you go. Well, it's going to be a while, but people need to get their copy now. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this new book, The Mentally Strong Leader. But before we do that, sort of a little bit about your journey. Like when you were 5, you didn't think you were going to be writing business books. And so I'm curious sort of what leads you. I mean, I don't want the whole life story, but give us how do you end up writing, and especially this book?
Right on. When I was 5, I thought I was going to be an archaeologist, by the way. So you see the connection here, right? Mining for dinosaur bones, mining for insight. How about that for a connection for you? But, the journey that got me to where I am today, really, Kevin, the shorthand of it is probably about 30 years ago when I began the corporate journey, I really spent a lot of time studying and trying to figure out, well, what discerns great leaders from leaders, from people who just happen to be in leadership positions. And I really started being the student a long time ago of trying to discern and codify. If I want to put people in a great leadership camp versus people who just happen to be leaders, what is that? And probably a lot like you, Kevin. I'm not just a professor of leadership. I'm not just someone who shares insights of leadership. I'm also a student of it. So I'm always learning. I'm always reading. I'm always trying to grow more in that space and share what I've learned with everybody. And it's a journey that continues today, but it's that kind of continuous growth mindset that has kind of brought me to where I am today. I think that, being able to talk to you and your audience today.
So the book is titled The Mentally Strong Leader. So we should probably start there. What do you mean? What does it mean to be a mentally strong leader?
Yeah, let's start even more basic than that, Kevin. Let's start with mental strength, which is the ability to regulate your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors productively, even in adversity. And you could argue, especially in adversity, as I like to shorthand it, it's how we manage internally so that we can lead better externally at both work and in life. And here's the thing, Kevin, I think you probably intuitively know this. I think your listeners and viewers intuitively know this, that, of course, if I want to succeed at work and life, yes, I have to be able to self-regulate. Of course, we know that. But here's this just in, exclusive to your listeners. It's really hard. It's really hard to regulate your emotions, your thoughts, and behaviors, especially in the face of setbacks. And that's why I set out so long ago to, really understand mental strength and write the book, The Mentally Strong Leader. Because, Kevin, I believe mental strength is the leadership superpower of our day. And I'm really excited to be here to talk to you about it today.
How did you know that I was going to put that up here? It's one of the lines in the early part of the book. You say,
oh, I did not know that.
It is the superpower, you say in the book. So
I did not know that.
Of course you didn't know, because you haven't seen what I have over here in the fancy side view mirror here. Listen, I do think this is, you're here because I saw you announce the book on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, we should probably chat about it. Get me a copy. Let me take a look. And so because it was you, I knew it would be good, but until I could read it, or at least look at it before I read it, that's what led to you being here. I do think it's a super, super important thing for us to talk about. And of course, the other big idea in the book is habits, right? Yeah. So like doing this, building this mental strength, and you're not just saying you really ought to wanna, you're saying, here are the habits that can help you get there. And so the book is really built around these habits. And let's see, 2, 4, like 6 of them, right? 6 or 7 of them. And I want to talk about them. I've got several things I'd sort of love to dive into. We could spend probably a show on each habit, which of course we're not going to do. But let's just start. I'll throw one up here and just talk about it a little, what you mean by it a little bit. And we'll sort of talk about each of them a little bit. First one is the fortitude habit.
Yes. Yeah. And by the way, there's 6, what I call mental muscles in the,
it is 6. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
6. Yeah. Yeah. And what you're referring to is the fact that because building mental strength is so hard, you need habits to lean on. You need repetitions and systems and frameworks to help you do that, which the mentally strong leaders pack with it. And so one of the core habits, one of the core mental muscles to build is fortitude. And of course, fortitude is the ability to push, as we all know, through challenges on our way to achievement. And, Kevin, if I had to say one thing that they ask me 2 questions. Well, what mental muscle out of the 6, which is there's, fortitude, and we'll let you get to the rest in a minute. Which one is the most, commonly occurring that we need to work on? And then which one most often do people associate with mental strength? I would say fortitude is the one people most instantly say, oh, if you're talking about mental strength, you must be talking about fortitude, because it's resilience. It's the epitome. It's the backbone of mental strength, that mental toughness and what it takes to push through the equation of hard, setbacks and adversity in the face of us. That's probably not surprising you to hear that, Kevin, right? That first and foremost, we associate mental strength with fortitude, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious because over the past several years, there have been a ton of books that use that R word, resilience.
Yes.
There's been a lot of discussion about grit. Is there a specific reason why you picked the word fortitude? Because we could, in some ways, call those words synonyms. Why specifically fortitude? Because I think there's something in there that we need to make sure we're clear on. So go ahead with that.
Yeah, I think to me, fortitude also requires an inner clarity and a willingness to accept things about yourself that you might not be accepting. Resilience is the raw pushing through, Kevin. Fortitude requires not just pushing through, but a willingness to really look at things about yourself that you might not want to admit. Perfect example. I'll talk about a tool in the mentally strong leader that I call the static trap that has to do with fortitude that you might not necessarily think of. It's not the first thing that would come to mind. Meaning if you want to be good at solving problems, right, which is a big part of fortitude, you got to have the fortitude to plow through them. And so many of us aren't. What gets in the way? What gets in the way of being a good problem solver? Well, to solve a problem, you have to at first admit that you have one. It takes the fortitude for you to look in the mirror and say, we're not where we need to be, team. I'm not where I need to be. We have a problem. I have a problem. And what happens is the reason we don't do that as much as we should, and it wears down our fortitude, is what I call the static trap, which is simply this. We can first be static in denying that problem exists. We do nothing about it until, guess what, Kevin? The problem can no longer be ignored. Then guess what? We create static or distortion around the problem. We make excuses about why the problem exists. We downplay its impact, or we redirect attention by finger pointing. And then finally, we can remain static. Even though we've now admitted the problem exists, we don't do anything about it. We just sit in its kind of funk and don't do anything about it until, frankly, it becomes we can no longer not do anything about it.
Yeah,
So
we
you
can
can
no
fall
longer
into
ignore
that.
it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's why I think fortitude was the right term, because it requires things like that, an ability to look at yourself and say, am I denying some fundamental truth here?
The second of the mental muscles, and therefore the habits that we talked about, that you're going to talk about today, is the confidence habit.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite of them, simply because I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Maybe also because the word confident is in the subtitle of my next book. But I think this is a super important piece because if we don't have confidence, it stops us short. We can't even get to fortitude if we don't have confidence. So give us an insight here, specifically about what's something we can do to work to build our confidence. Because everyone that's listening or watching is at a different point in their own sort of confidence continuum, right? So like, what's something that people could do from wherever they are to get a little more self-confidence?
I think, I'll share one of the tools in the mentally strong leader in the confidence, section. It's called the doubt continuum. And it's based on an important insight, Kevin. And I am certain, given the book that you're working on, you know this to be a universal truth. Confidence is not the absence of doubt. It's how we manage our relationship with doubt. Because I have interviewed so many people for this book, The Mentally Strong Leader. And I can tell you, Kevin, even the ones that radiate confidence will tell you it's not because that doubt is nowhere in sight. It's that they've learned how to manage that relationship with doubt. And one of the tools in the Mentally Strong Leader helps you do that. It's called the doubt continuum. And I want your listeners to imagine a simple continuum. On both sides, there's 4 items on that continuum. On both sides, the left and the far right side of that continuum, are danger zones. One is where you're actually overconfident. Self-doubt is completely absent to the point that you're blowing through red light signals. You think you only need to operate in an echo chamber, and it's not well-placed confidence. On the other side of the spectrum is where you're actually paralyzed by fear. That doubt has gone beyond healthy, level.
And now you're immobilized, right?
Now you're immobilized. And I talk about strategies to overcome that. But for the tool itself, just understanding your relationship with doubt means you want to be in the middle of that continuum. You either want to be perfectly confident, where you have the right balance of data and intuition, internal gut and outside perspective, or you're really embracing healthy doubt, which means you know doubt exists. It's parked in the backdrop. You're okay with it existing, but it's not causing you to say that, for example, I doubt I can lead this team. You know that doubt's there. It allows you to focus on how will I lead the team. It allows you to say, I am okay with not knowing everything I need to know to be a success right now because I believe in my ability to figure things out as I go. So understanding this relationship, that it's really about managing your relationship with doubt, is a powerful way to take a first step toward being a more confident self.
One of the things that you talk about in this chapter is an acronym, which I'd never heard. And I think it's interesting that it's in this point in the book because I want to ask you about it for a different reason. There are lots of leaders. You've worked with some of them and trained some of them where they're like, the only feedback I need to give is corrective feedback because I don't need to give people positive feedback. Like I never got any. Look, I turned out okay. Your acronym is WAIN. We all need encouragement. Can you just talk about that? Because first of all, I agree with you 100%. But can you just talk to that leader who might be out there who's kind of a little hardened around this, thinks that all of that is a little bit kind of like spin, a little too soft. Can you just talk about we all need encouragement?
Yeah, and I picked the word WAIN because its other meaning is obviously we can wander away from a close connection with a human being if we don't understand the fact that we all need encouragement. And Kevin, I have encountered a lot of leaders that you can't code necessarily as mentally strong, even though they're fully confident. They convert that into everyone else should be confident, and you don't need my approval to be confident. You have all the energy you need within yourself, and they make that assumption, and it's just not true. It comes back to this universal truth that we all have some level of doubt deep within inside us. And if you can remember that, you don't want to wane from a close relationship with employees. If you can remember, we all need encouragement. It's a human truth. It takes you down a notch to say, I have to invest the time. I have to make it a strategy to let my people know and not assume they have everything they need to get through what they need to get through. I need to be an active part and actively encourage them in that process along the way. I even suggest, Kevin, giving in the book, My Strong Leader, giving informed encouragement, which is not the general, rah, you can do it. And there's nothing wrong with telling someone they could do it, but it's a lot better if they know why you think they can do
something
it.
Specific.
Yes.
100%. So the third set of habits is around boldness.
Yep.
And I specifically want to get at this idea of boldness. As with all of them, you give us plenty of tools to help us. But I want you to talk about the Yerkes-Dodson law, because I think this is an important thing, important law, and important that I'm not sure everyone's familiar with. So talk a little bit about boldness, but specifically, I want you to talk about this.
Yeah, and I think in boldness, I really encourage people in the Mentally Strong Leader to think big, but to think big in a continuum. I don't want people being unrealistic, because sometimes we say, oh, all I have to do is be incredibly bold, take wild risks, and all of a sudden, I'll be mentally strong and I'll be better off for it. But there's a limit to that. And I encourage people to think about a simple continuum. It starts with, all right, you want to push your thinking beyond the day-to-day. You want to push beyond daring. You want to push beyond some discomfort you might feel. But then halfway in between discomfort and delusion lies the Yerkes-Dodson law. And it's a seminal kind of psychology finding that says peak performance actually occurs in a specific circumstance when you're in an optimal state of anxiety and discomfort, where you feel a little bit discomfort, and it has to elevate your skill set, it has to elevate your focus and your attention, but not so much so that it's paralyzing you and you're afraid, like, if fear or failure is now imminent because I've gone that far. And the Yerkes-Dodson law lies in between. Can you push your thinking in your activity beyond a level of discomfort, but not so far that it's delusional? And you know what, Kevin? I can wish and dream big all I want about being a professional baseball player. But guess what? I am a horrible athlete. And if I just push myself beyond the discomfort of here I am spending all this time trying to become a professional athlete, I'm not embracing the fact that it's actually delusional. So you have to find that sweet point in between, which is called the Yerkes-Dodson law, that optimal point of performance.
I love that. And I want, and oh, by the way, not just athletic ability. Let's just be honest. You're also a little old for it, Scott.
Yeah,
Just saying.
I think the hair color gave it away. Yeah, I think you're
So
probably
I have
right.
to tell everybody this, and this is a little bit of inside author baseball, I suppose. But page 191, Scott practices what he preaches because he says that, hey, I'm going to be bold here and tell you if you've gotten this far, one of the awesome things you could do for me is to leave a review for the book on your favorite online platform, Amazon or whatever. Like I have never read this in a book, and yet every author wants everyone to give them a review. There's all sorts of good reasons why that is helpful to authors. So I'm telling all of you as viewers and listeners of this podcast, not just for this one, but for any of them, if you love the show and you love the author and their book ideas in their book, giving them a review is a really, really, really great way to give back to them. And I just love that you put that in the book. I got to that page and I just started smiling. I even laughed a little bit, not in a negative way, but in a really positive way. So there are 3 more habits, and I'm watching our time. I want us to spend a little time on each, though. The next one, I think, is a really, really useful one that people don't think about it in the context of habit, I don't think, and that is the messaging habit.
Yeah. And messaging habit is simply staying positive minded, Kevin, even in the face of negativity as a leader, and staying kind of at all times really engaged in a conversation. It's about the message you send to the troops. And think in your own life, Kevin. I am sure you've experienced a leader, or frankly, even a human being, that you're talking to them. You're looking them right in the eyes, and you know they are not listening.
Yeah, they are somewhere else. Yeah, 100%.
They are somewhere. We can pick that up as human beings. That is sending the wrong message. It is the opposite of being mentally strong. And, and I share a lot of habits in there about how to stay in the moment, how to really listen well, how to really stay engaged in a conversation, how to resist multitasking, because as leaders, we all live in a fishbowl. Everybody's watching our every move, Kevin. They're rapping on the glass, wondering where we're going to swim to next. And you want to send the right message out. It just requires intentionality.
And messaging isn't just communicating, right?
No.
It is everything you just described as communicating, but it's not just verbalizing or typing or that. So it's not just words. There's something in that area that you also talk about that I thought you had a useful way to think about, and that's transparency. You have a couple of tips for people real quick about what does transparency look like and how can we be better at it?
Well, let me ask you a question first. Is there anything more transparent in your opinion, Kevin, than someone who's not being transparent?
It's fair, right? Like it's the easiest thing to tell is that they're not. Right?
Is they're not. In the Mentally Strong Leader, I talk about a tool called the window of transparency, which helps. It's easy to say, hey, look, leaders, if you want to be mentally strong, you need to be transparent. Okay, but in what ways? And I talk about, hey, you could be transparent by putting the effort in to share information, by being transparent with people about where they stand in their career, by being transparent about why you made a decision, transparent about what your shortfalls are. So there's very specific ways where it really makes sense. If you put a little bit of effort and attention into it, that transparency will be remembered by the troops disproportionately and help you come across as a mentally strong leader.
Yeah, I love that because so often people think about transparency just about themselves.
Yes.
Right? And I had a guest once, and I cannot remember who it was. I wish I could. That said, hey, there's a difference between being transparent about things that are personal versus things that are private, and that you don't need to share everything and be like saran wrap transparent. And yet, so I really like this personal versus private thing. But what I like about what you're saying is there are certainly other areas we can be transparent about, right? That aren't just about ourselves, but about how we view other people on the team in terms of where they stand, they stand with us, what we see as their career path, all of those sorts. There's like more things here for us to consider than I think a lot of people take the time to consider.
And the theme, and through most of those, Kevin, in the tool in the Mentally Strong Leader, is that they have a benefit and they are of service to other people in you being transparent.
We've got two habits, two mental
Yep.
muscles to go real quick, but we are talking with Scott Mautz, the author of The Mentally Strong Leader. Mental muscle, habit number 5. And these last two, I think, are more self-explanatory perhaps than the others. So I love that they are the last ones we're going to talk about, because I think that they're probably the ones that people probably have the best incoming idea about, the decision-making habit being one of those two. Anything in specifics that you want to say about this?
I'll just quick say, Kevin, if you think about it, emotion and bias and undisciplined thinking, they're all the enemies of good decision making. They're like the mongoose to the snake. And so it takes self-regulation skills, mental strength, in other words, it takes self-regulation skills to give you the courage and the conviction to be decisive and to fuel your ability to make good decisions along the way and to avoid biases. Decision making is one of the topics that most naturally lends itself to requiring self-regulation. That's why it's such an obvious piece of mental strength.
And then the last one is the goal focus habit.
Yeah, and if you think
notice
about
everybody, Scott is not saying the goal setting habit.
That's right.
The goal focus habit. Go ahead.
Staying focused on your goals, because think of the opposite. When you have wayward thoughts and emotions and actions that distract you from the goal at hand, that lack of mental strength that can kick in at that time, that keeps you from being disciplined and staying goal focused, it's literally like the opposite of achievement. I've shown in the Mentally Strong Leader that how correlated mental strength is to achievement. If there's anything that's the opposite of that, it's not staying focused on your goals so that you don't achieve the thing you set out to achieve. And I have quite a few tools in the book to help you do that.
100% true. So we've talked about the 6 mental muscles and the habit sets that go with each of them. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, Scott, that you wished I had?
Yeah, just to say that, a lot of people say, okay, Scott, I got it. So how do I figure out which muscle I need to work on and how mentally strong am I? And I think it's a really powerful thing to let you know that in the Mentally Strong Leader, there's a mental strength self-assessment. 50 questions proven with data science that you can take that will give you an overall mental strength score and a breakdown by mental muscle, whether it's fortitude, confidence, boldness, decision-making, goal focus, messaging. You get a score to determine which mental muscles are right for you so that you can build a customized, unique, tailored mental strength training program.
Yep, that's true. And so you can learn more about that in the book. It's right in the book. You can take it right from the book. Don't be one of those people that's afraid to write in the book. Just go ahead and take the assessment right in here. I'm going to shift gears, Scott, before we finish and ask you a couple of questions that I like to ask all of my guests. Yeah. In fact, whenever I meet smart people, I like to ask these questions, which is why they're here. So the first one is, Scott, what do you do for fun?
Oh, for me, I love to get outdoors. I love hiking, and I love going to concerts and music. And I'm a video game nerd as well. And I also like movies. So I like to mix all that stuff together.
I do not think I've had a guest, and you're episode number 444. Scott, I don't think I've ever had someone say video games. Doesn't mean that no one does it for fun that's been on here. I don't think anyone has said that. I think you're the first one.
I'm mentally strong enough to admit it.
No judgment here. I just don't think anyone's ever said it. Next question. What are you reading these days, Scott?
6 of Crows by Lee Bardugo. It's a young adult fantasy series. I'm a big fan of the whole Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons drama. It dates back to my nerdy days as a kid. So that's what I'm reading now.
6 of Crows.
6 of Crows.
We'll make sure we have that in the show notes, as well as, of course, how to get to and find the Mentally Strong Leader. How can we, where do you want to point people? How can they learn more about you and about the book? Where do you want to
point a couple things. You can go to scottmautz.com and learn about all my keynotes, the trainings, the workshops I give. Check out the book. And also, I put together a gift for all your listeners today, a 60-page free PDF download that has that mental strength self-assessment that I was talking about for free, along with prompts to get the most out of the book. And you can get that at scottmautz.com/mentally strong gift. And that's how you can get that 60-page free PDF.
Say that one more time.
scottmautz.com/mentally mentally strong gift.
Mentally strong gift. We'll have that in the show notes as well. And you can see there that we have a fellow D&D nerd who's commenting
Yeah.
here on the live stream. So Scott, thanks for being here. And before we wrap up, though, I've got a question I want to ask everyone else who's watching and listening, whether it's now live or whether it's later. It's the question that moves us from idea to action. And we need this question before we start to implement any of the habits that we've talked about today. And that is, now what? What action will you take as a result of this conversation? Hopefully you've got some insight, right? Maybe you found great value in the Yerkes-Dodson law, maybe in the doubt continuum, maybe whatever it might be. The question isn't, did you learn something? The question is, what are you going to do with what you learned? Because ultimately that's where value will come. That's where results will come. That's where you will build the habits to be more mentally strong. So Scott, thanks again so much for being here. It was a pleasure to have you. And for those of you that are watching or listening, if this is your first time, make sure you come back, listen wherever you find your podcasts. Make sure that if you've been subscribed, that you recommend it to somebody else. And if you aren't subscribed, this is the perfect time to start, because we're here every week. And so next week I'll be back with another episode and another guest on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.